All right, welcome everyone. So happy you can join us here today for our Guide Pathways office hour session on degrees when due, helping students to cross the finish line. So we're very excited today to be able to engage in this topic. We feel it's a really high impact strategy, a low hanging fruit in terms of helping students who are really close to the finish line being able to get their degrees or award degrees when due to students who've actually already completed all the requirements, but just might not have applied for graduation. So with that, kick it off and introduce, in case you have not met us before, I'm Stacy Teeters. I'm one of the Guided Pathways regional coordinators here in the San Diego Imperial region. And I am joined by my partner in crime, Wendy Smith, who is our other regional coordinator in the area. We also have joining us today our wonderful student assistant, Margaret Doe, who has been a wonderful asset to our team and helping us to put on all of these wonderful meetings and learning opportunities for the region.
We're really excited to have Kate Mahar with us today. She is the Dean of Innovation and Strategic Projects at Shasta College. She was formerly a colleague of ours as a regional coordinator for the North and Far North. And we think she's just a really wonderful person who's done incredible work with degrees when due.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, it's really nice to see everyone. I'm really honored to be with you all today. I am definitely a practitioner. So when we get into this project, I have a dual role because this year I've been asked to help with some of the other California colleges that are joining on, but I'm absolutely, when we did this project up at Shasta College, I was in IR, and we started about 3 years ago, and we've been able to sort of progressively make a difference in multiple areas towards how we do several of our policies around near completion. So I'll get into more details as we go, but I definitely have a dual role when I'm talking, but mostly from my heart, I'm just like y'all as a practitioner. So before I jump in, has anyone ever heard of Degrees When Due project? How about IHEP, Institute for Higher Ed Policy? Cool. All right. I won't bore you. No, that's good. Let's see. Let me start with a video. Let's see.
How many students began the path towards a college degree, but never made it to the finish line to receive their credential? 35 million. That's right. Some 35 million Americans have attended some college without receiving a degree, and 4 million completed at least 2 years of coursework. Many of these students actually earned the right credits to receive a degree, but never saw the credential. And many students find hurdles to the degree. Low income, first generation, and minority students are most likely to encounter and get sidetracked by these hurdles. This is not good for our nation or communities, because by 2020, 65% of all jobs in America will require at least a college degree or credential, while only 45% of our workforce currently holds either. That's why it's important that our colleges have resources and programs to re-engage students, help them get back on track, and award them degrees when due. The Institute for Higher Education Policy created Degrees When Due to help colleges increase attainment among students with some college but no degree, an approach we call degree reclamation. How does it work? Degrees When Due help states and colleges carry out strategies by bringing together the right campus and system leaders, providing instruction on better using data, offering live coaching, and developing work plans to build campus capacity and help more students cross the degree completion finish line. And the results show that degree reclamation works. Since 2009, we've helped over 500 colleges award 20,000 new associate's degrees. We're ready to expand Degrees When Due so that every near completer crosses the finish line. Ready to join us?
Little sales pitch, although it costs nothing, but okay, that's just a nice little background, but let me go into the PowerPoint here and then definitely lots of times for questions. Okay, so that's a little bit about Degrees When Due. It's a project that's designed to help folks that have actually earned a credential get the degree they earned, but it's also designed for the institution to be able to really dig into why people didn't finish. So to really look at students to figure out who fell out of the pathway and why, and try to plug those holes as you start inviting people back into your pathway, and of course giving people the degrees if they already earned them. So let me share a little bit more. Okay. So Degrees When Due is a project of the Institute for Higher Ed Policy. IHEP is a nonpartisan nonprofit. It's funded by these folks, and they work on all aspects of post-secondary ed. You may have seen them lately. They've done a lot working with formerly incarcerated students. Just a lot of great research around the importance of post-secondary ed and how to support non-traditional POPs. So they've been working with Degrees When Due for, I think, 2009, and it's a combination of degree reclamation, giving people the degrees that they earned, and then working to streamline pathways. So this is why it's so important for the guided pathway conversation. So it's a national initiative to increase degree attainment. They specifically focus on the population of some college no degree. So this is, above all else, a way to stop and reflect about your pathways. And if we've got this many learners that didn't finish, to ask the question why. And at far Northern California, where I am, we have 1 out of 3 of all adults have some college no degree. Statewide, we have 1 out of 5. But over 33% of our population started school. They started, they had an intention, a goal in mind, and didn't get there. So this project allowed us the opportunity to think through why that was. So Degrees When Due, it's paid for by IHEP, it's grants funds, other than time of your campus, time of the humans, there's no fees associated. What it does is help you to bring together different folks across your campus to think about basically the pathway from different perspectives. It helps you to identify data, look at your own resources. It provides coaching, and then a really structured way to pull that data and look at the data, and then an analysis of helps you analyze what exactly is going on there. So when you join Degrees When Due, there's quite a bit of welcoming and onboarding. You get connected to this learning management system with all of these trainings on data, on the realities for adult re-engagement, for looking at your own policies. There's procedures around actual data mining, working with a team to identify your what they call universe of interest. At Shasta College, we decided to look at the amount of adults or the amount of students that had 45 units or more back from 2013 that left our institution without a degree or credential. So 45 units or more without a degree or credential. And dig into that to figure out what was going on. We also got coached to look at the policies that were causing so many people to fall out of the pathway. And then there's a whole procedure of, okay, now we have this group of students, we've identified them. How do we find them? How do we reach out? How do we invite them to come back? How do we let them know that they actually earned a degree or credential? How do we differentiate the outreach to someone that earned a degree that didn't know it? That's 1 class away, that's 3 classes away. And then how do you bring them back into the institution to help them finish up? So it's a national project. There's actually 21 states involved with 175 plus campuses. So this is going into the 3rd year of the cohort. Shasta College worked with College of the Siskiyous in cohort 1. And then in about the last year or so, I've been helping as a coach. The reason it's so exciting to talk to you now is because I have decided that they wanted to focus on a fully California cohort. And part of that is, we've got the vision for success, the community college system, there's a completion agendas as CSU. There's so much policy alignment right now that I have felt it was really ripe time to work with colleges to really identify adults, near completers, and help them across. and including looking at that pathway across segments. So in cohort 1, I was just looking at Shasta College, but now it's going to be about that whole pathway for students. And if they fell out of, say they fell out of CSU San Diego, how can they come back to your institution? You know, what's going on in between. So it's at each campus and then in between where we might be losing folks. So this is the exciting part. This is going to be the California cohort. It's not too late to join. We have a lot of CSU involvement, which is really exciting, especially because of the commitment to really bring back adults into that pathway. And then, as you can see, a lot of our brothers and sister community colleges. The reason I think it's so powerful right now for the community colleges is its connection to guided pathways. When I was doing this work at Shasta College, when we looked at our data and I started identifying trends of why we were losing people, I'd bring them straight to the guided pathway committee and say, hey, look at this. We have a local computer literacy requirement that a full 1 out of 5 people that left here without a degree is because of that. We need to figure that out. This part is really confusing to folks, and we only offer our courses at a certain time, so can't keep people on the path and if we don't take care of those things. So I'm really excited about the cohort 3, and also there's some really heavy duty IR people in here, Terrence Willett, Eric Skinner, that I can't wait to work with as well, because I do think there should be ways that we can all learn from each other on this. So in addition to the actual looking at your student data to figure out what was going on for your students, there's also a research agenda with this project in partnership with the University of Utah. And what they're really trying to figure out is, what does the degree mean? So it's not only about getting that credential, but does it have an influence on their next choices for employment or education? In our region, we are also looking at if we had 1 out of every 3 that fell out of the pathway, can just think about how much they must distrust Shasta College and higher ed in general, and what does that do for the next gen? So how do students understand and perceive the value? Does it transcend beyond them into their family? And then how has this analysis of our data actually made changes for our institution that can be sustained? So of course, data is at the key. We had a sense that we were losing folks, but when we really pulled our data, and we're not a big school at all, from 2013, 40 students that had 45 units or more that left without a degree or credential, we had 4,500 students. So that's huge for a small school. I mean, it's just insane. And as our president said, when we really started looking at who we lost, it was like a kick in the stomach. And I think it's been, it was 20 here, it was 50 here, it was 100 there. But when you look at 4,500 folks, and when we dug into that data, we wanted to chunk it so that we could make it, we could actually, like, sort of how to eat the elephant, like how do we, 4,500 was too much to tackle. So we looked at 60 units or more, and we actually still had 700 students that left with 60 units or more that had no degree or credential. So the other important part about this degree when degrees when due work is it comes with this like layered piece of policies. So we're looking at our own campus policies. What we found after we analyzed our data was how many folks didn't know that they had to apply for the degree to get it. That is especially true with our certificates. So they didn't know they had to apply, or they were applying in the spring that they wanted to graduate when it was too late. It was too late to do anything about it if they didn't have it. The next level is that inter-campus piece. What policies do we have at Shasta College that actually becomes a barrier for where they're trying to get to? Or what are some of the policies that CSUs that make a barrier for students that are trying to get into it? So it's not just your institution, but how it fits in the policy. And then of course, how it aligns with state policy. For state policy, it's been amazing. This work fits right into the Vision for Success. It fits right into the new funding formula because it's getting people across that finish line. And of course, it fits right into guided pathways because of the, you're really looking at your pathways and using these data tools to figure out what's happening there. Now it actually, once we really dug into our data and figured out what was happening at Shasta College, the whole conversation of credit for prior learning became more relevant as well. We had so many students in our welding program that were getting picked up before they completed because there was such a high need. And we had a batch of students that didn't get their degrees because they were missing a capstone course, but yet they were working in the field doing welding. So it ended. And then with federal policy, it's been fascinating as we learn more about how do we educate adults, how do we get them across that finish line? What does that mean financial aid? How come we can't give them aid if they're not going full time? So there's this overlaying part of policy that you'll find when you really get to dig into the project. So if you join Degrees When Due, the Institute for Higher Ed Policy, there's communication, newsletters, whatever is coming up for multiple areas, whether it be degree audit or how do you create a quality program for adult re-engagement. You get this national network of sharing of best practices and community of practices. And then you get a coach, that was me in California, where as your teams are going through this and data and questions, I'm just there to help and support. If you're running into challenges, if you want to know how somebody else is doing it, if you're figuring out how to re-engage students, that's my role. And then there's this whole state liaison piece, and that's happening from Project Attain at CSU Sacramento. So the presidents are talking to each other and they're talking to the chancellor's offices, and they're trying to figure out what we can learn from this. We're going to be building toolkits out of specifically what we learned in California. And then also California Competes is going to join this cohort to help translate what we're learning into next steps, especially for adults and engagement in employment. So I got to work at Shasta College, and then I've been helping as a coach for Colorado and California. And what's been really interesting is even though each process is contained to each campus, so when you work with a campus, you help them bring together a team that looks at this issue from multiple perspectives. So we had instructional deans, we had researchers, we had faculty members, A&R, marketing. We had from every perspective of why are we losing the students, what's going on for them, and what needs to be done. And as you do the degree audits, and there's certain trends that we identified, and then when we work with other campuses, I keep seeing them everywhere. So we're losing students because they earned a degree but didn't know it because of their timelines or unclear policies for degree conferral. That was especially true for first-generation students when we dug into the equity implications. A first-generation student was less likely to go and say, hey, wait a minute, you told me this and I earned that degree. They were more likely to say, I knew it, I was never college material, even though they earned the units and walked away. It's really heartbreaking. Are there unclear curriculum requirements that became barriers? At Shasta, the which science with which lab was a barrier. Folks thought that they were doing the right thing, but they weren't. We had some computer curriculum requirements that were no longer relevant. We created a local computer competency requirement about 18 years ago and never updated it. So many of our students were taking fully online programs, and then at the end they were finding out that they didn't have this local computer competency requirement. So we built a credit for prior learning assessment that they could opt out of, and now we've gotten rid of that completely. What we also found is that students that say they applied for an ADT in psychology but didn't get that ADT in psychology, they actually earned a local degree in psychology, but maybe they didn't know it. So when we looked at the degree audit, it wasn't just towards their ultimate goal, it was did they meet something along the way? And it was, we had about 20% of those folks that actually met something else along the way. And then what is the avenue back for students that are just a few short? So if they left your campus for frustration or life got in the way or for whatever reason, how do you bring them back? Working closely with Detroit folks, they had this great marketing campaign of, you know, we've changed, so have you, come on back. You know, the idea is you never invite an adult back to the program that didn't serve them well in the first place. But how do you message to them to say, you know what, you're only short a certain math class. Well, guess what? We've changed our math pathways, you know, come on back. Or you're only short this class. And guess what? We have a weekend course that you can access that while you're working. So those are some of the elements that we found at Shasta that I also find in a lot of the colleges that I work in now, especially around the not irrelevant requirements, but one of the colleges I work with had a health and wellness requirement. So students thought that meant yoga. It actually meant cultural competency, because they felt like you couldn't be well in the society without cultural competencies, but the students didn't know it. So, you know, that type of thing as you dig into it. So for Shasta College, and this just in 1 year, we looked at 602 students that had 60 units or more that didn't have a credential, and 231 students were able to get a degree. We also, what's called reverse transfer, we looked at students that left Shasta College and went to CSU Chico. There was 383 of those folks, but 165 of those students actually fell out of the pathway, and so they had nothing to show for it, even though they had done multiple years even beyond community college. And 34 of those folks received a degree, and we're still doing outreach to them. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day, a counselor, that said, we just need to get the official transcript and we can get another degree, but the student doesn't have $10. And I was like, here's my credit card, just $10, get her the degree. So, and then we've also changed multiple policies based on what we've learned. We are switching from an opt-out, an opt-in into an opt-out, like, hey, good news, you earned it, do you want it, versus students having to seek it. We've put more degree auditing in place. We have gotten rid of that computer literacy, just multiple things that we have learned because of this process. So not only are we able to serve the students that we lost, but hopefully prevent from folks in the future.
Hey, Kate, thank you. I just wanted to jump in because I think this is a really important thing to bring up. If a student doesn't have $10 for a transcript with a university partner, you know, what are the implications, I think, for partnerships in terms of having data and MOU agreements? Do you even need the official transcript if you have the official data from them? And that could then bypass, you know, some of those requirements. So I think it really opens windows into policy for this work and what we need to do better for intersegmental alignment.
Yeah, your LA peers have done such an amazing job between the LA community colleges and Dominguez Hills and CSUN, where the students are actually just shared within the pathway. And if they're not doing well at CSUN, they rotate back into the community college, but the counselors still work with them in the community college system to get them back along their pathway. I mean, there's such amazing things that are happening out of this work where people just sit and they look at this data and they find these trends and they look at them from multiple perspectives. One of the most exciting things was once we identified students was to reach out to them and let them know that they had actually earned a degree. What was interesting is they thought we were spam. They thought we were lying, you know. So we actually had to create a web page and a special phone number and call students to say, hey, you earned a degree, but in case you don't trust us, call back this number. Well, you know, Shasta College. So getting those degrees and then talking to the students about how much burden they had on their shoulders because they thought it was something they did. Just how much they were carrying was heartbreaking. That they were owning all of those challenges, which really, really were institutional challenges at the time. And then building out our program that we called ACE that allows compressed courses designed for working adults, balancing multiple things to be able to come in and get those courses and move along. So that's sort of, you know, I jump back and forth between the federal and the state and the college, and I apologize because I get passionate when I talk about it. But what kind of questions do you have? And is this interesting, or you know, what resonated for anybody?
I have a question. What are some of the key elements that you see in those community colleges that are participating in terms of the foundation, or what do they have in place that has allowed them to succeed?
That's a great question. Sierra College did in about a month and a half what Shasta, it took my college a year to do because they have degree works in place and they were able to do the degree audits right away. So strong relationships between IR and IT to be able to pull the data, you know, a comfort level working with clearinghouse, because once you identify the block you want to look at, then you do a data pull in partnership with the clearinghouse to see if maybe those students earn degrees elsewhere. And then you actually look through to do a degree audit process. What's interesting is working with some of the CSUs that are much bigger than us, they've really focused in on Latinx students or first gen students, or just really focusing in on one specific population of students. And those groups tend to have such passion towards that student population that they've identified that keeps people engaged. What I find everywhere is how off we were at our, we knew we lost some folks. We did not know we lost 4,500 students in 5 years, with that many units, 45 units. That means they put the time in, like they had every intention of finishing and they didn't. So announcement goes out to the presidents. So it's been interesting being a coach, because sometimes the senior leadership signs on for the project and then I start working with the team and they're like, wait, what is this? So I also think it's been powerful when it's gone the other way too, when maybe, the researcher or somebody identified the opportunity and brought it up that way. What's also going to be really interesting is the CSU Monterey, UC Santa Cruz, Hartnell, Monterey Bay Peninsula, and Cabrillo joined as a group. So they're going to start with that intersegmental look with people from each of those institutions. So I think when there's that broader commitment to serving adults with some college and no degree, and we had a president that was really wanted to know why we were losing folks. So we had leadership support that whole way. That really helped, especially when it came time to changing policies.
Oh, go for it, Christina.
I was wondering if you can come and talk to like a group at our campus and present this.
Sure. And IHEP would also be happy to present as well. And they'd be able to speak to more data statewide and nationally. But definitely, and what campus is that, Christina?
I'm at San Diego City College.
San Diego City, great. I think San Diego State Global Campus is joining. And I have found when there are colleges in the region, then there's kind of a neat, the group kind of joins together. But they walk you through every step of the way. How to identify your universe of interest? How do you make decisions on the data you want to pull? So it was an interesting process. And at first it seemed so overwhelming, but the way that, because especially now in cohort 3, if you have people that are willing to sit around the table and do it, then the project is really manageable. The hardest part, everyone is so busy, is to get all those people around the table. But with the guided pathway conversation, it was so hand in hand that we had some of that capacity built right in. And reaching out to students, I work with College of the Siskiyous, and Megan up there was having a really bad day, and the whole committee was going to have a plan to reach out to the students that they identified. But she was having such a bad day. She was like, you know what, I'm just going to start calling students. She's like, hey, do you have a degree? And it was just this cute, like the happiness of people jumping up and down and screaming and just being so excited that they actually earned that degree. So there's like this, it's one of those few things where you get this like really right now personal interaction at the same time you're tackling these bigger policy issues.
And I could attest to being one of the students. I received not too long ago a certificate on social sciences and associates.
Oh, wow. Oh, really?
But and I wasn't aware that I had earned it until one day. So I'm a research analyst at Imperial Valley College, and I started to play around with the degree works.
Oh, wow.
And I realized that I was at 100% for that specific degree. So then I got a hold of a counselor, and she explained to me that, yes, I have earned it, that she would process the application for me. But then again, that could have been something that I could have earned probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so powerful. And it's interesting, especially for the folks that then fell out, that never made it to that BA and that ultimate goal, that they actually had something that didn't know it. That's neat. And that you have degree works. We don't have a degree audit system. We're doing it we're building one. So if you have degree works, you're even further down the road starting off.
And that being said, I have a question. What do you think would be the selling points for the college for something like this to be implemented? And the reason I say that is because prior to I remember when the student success metrics were on their way, the gated pathways, there was a lot of, okay, there's going to be funding for a lot of the awards that are for the students. So this was getting a lot of momentum. But then they decided to update the metric that it was only those students that had enrolled within that year. So then it lost some momentum. So in your case, what would be the selling points for to have this implemented at a college?
What a great question. It was interesting when we started, there was, that conversation, what is the funding formula going to look like? But when we really started looking at the numbers and the students that it impacted, our president instructed the group that we were not allowed to think about the funding formula. We are not allowed to think about anything except for what was the right thing to do for students, and what we needed to learn as a college. So there is that idea of like, oh, everyone's just doing this to kind of get your credentials across. But for Shasta College, it was really trying to put, shore up that pathway, because we were losing people left and right. Especially when you started looking at the trends of what was within our control to fix that were such barriers to students. Recognizing that our offices closed at that time, closed at 5, so working adult couldn't reach anybody after work. It makes you look at every single one of your procedures. All of our marketing was to this mythological 18-year-old white blonde person in our very industrial region. Our marketing didn't match up with our students. It didn't seem welcoming to probably 99% of the population. So it just kind of had you look at everything. And then now we've shored up some holes and we're getting people across the finish line. So now there's some incentive. But at the time, it was really just like, what's in the best interest of students.
Yeah, and I think even now, this is potentially even more critical, right? In terms of bringing this information back to a college campus. This is a low-hanging fruit in terms of these students have already completed or very near completion to actually get to their degree objective. And if you think about how the pandemic and the economic recession are affecting students, and especially disproportionately affecting certain groups of students in certain communities, having that degree or that certificate is going to give them a leg up if they've lost a job or trying to, supplement income by, becoming and moving up and trying to find different work to help to support their families right now. So I think it's a huge equity imperative. This is something that we have control over. All of this is policies, all of this is data that we already have. It's just getting the college community to commit to doing it right and to bringing people together to the table. And I think if you can sell it as guided pathways, this is a high impact strategy. It's not reprioritizing what you should be doing. It is a part of the work that you should already be undergoing as a college as well.
Thanks, Stacy. That's such a great point. And I left out one of the coolest things. For this next cohort, there's also the option to look at the impact of COVID. So historically, they've looked at who fell out 3 semesters or more in the past, but now they've got an extra metric if you really want to look at those students that we lost because of COVID to figure out how to re-engage them right away. That's not, you don't have to do that, but if for colleges that really have strong research capacity that want to dig into that, that's going to be available to them as well.
I was just telling Kate, I'm just really happy to hear more about Degrees When Due. I knew some things about it, and I think I really appreciated that if you wanted to, you could do it really sort of grassroots on your campus, just with a couple of things. And I actually like the We've Changed, So Have You campaign. And I never thought about the AB 705 implications, because campuses have transformed a lot. They do have new math pathways, new English pathways, and students who fell out before, and new ESL pathways as well. May be able to come back. You could say, hey, here's what's changed. We want you back. I love that idea. I do have a question, and maybe this is a question for everybody here, but why do students have to apply to graduate? What's the origin of that process? Just to for record keeping, or where did it originate?
At Shasta, we had that on the books before we did degree auditing, because that was sort of letting folks know that they were interested in graduating. And so that would give A&R and everyone time, the registrar, to look to make sure that they had everything. But even as things got automated, that rule just sort of still stuck around. And then our student services folks were like, oh, but we really need that because we need to know how to plan graduation. So we had a procedure that wasn't doing what it was originally intended for, but it was important to another procedure, but that could change, so, but we never reflected. But Oliver, were you going to say something?
Yes, there has always been also that concern that if a student graduates from a specific major, and let's just say they were about to change their major, they're afraid that their financial aid will not be furtherly funded.
Mm-hmm.
There's been that concern as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, I still ask myself some question. I mean, what's so wrong about getting a degree?
Yeah, it's interesting. Of the 383, we definitely understood that sometimes for financial aid or immigration reasons, folks don't want to get that degree. So we said, you've earned it. Let us know if you don't want it. But we only had one person that said, no, I don't want it. Out of all those folks, everybody else was, we're excited to get that credential.
So maybe we should award them and then just provide that. If you do not want it, please
let us know
or give it back.
Yeah.
Opt in instead of opt out.
See more and more colleges going in that direction, especially as they figure out how to automate things.
And I think, getting started too, there might be a difference between groups of students who have been, removed from the college for a period of time versus those who might have recently stopped out. I think as you move forward with this work, after you get that initial cohort and look retroactively to the students you've been serving, that's potentially a process, right? To where are you running degree audits and letting students what they have already accumulated? If they would like to, maybe it prompts them to meet with a counselor to discuss, is it the right time to graduate for you or not? Should we go ahead with this? So it moves it again, still into the proactive institutional responsibility of the college to take the forefront on reaching out to the students and letting them know. Luke, did you have some insights to share from the counselor's perspective as well?
Well, I was going to say the same thing that Oliver did and that Christina also reiterated in the chat. But something else that came to mind is that, for instance, at Maricosta College, we're like a destination college, and what we found is that we have a lot of students coming into Maricosta that have units from other schools, and more so, like more than just like from another school. Like, for instance, we have a neighboring school, Palomar College, but you'd think, okay, maybe we're swapping students, but that's not the case. They only represent a small sliver of all of the different colleges that are represented. So that puts a burden on our evaluators in terms of evaluating prior coursework and doing that up front, where right now we have degree works, but it's only for our veteran students do we evaluate the prior coursework and plug it in. So, when I'm looking at it as a counselor, I still have to ask the student, do you have coursework from other schools? And I have to take the time to look at that. Students can't run degree audits knowing exactly how their classes fit. I have to look at it. And so if a school is trying to use degree works to really figure out who really is that close to getting the degree, it's not possible at my school. And it won't be unless we have more people working in evaluation being able to handle that workload.
And that actually sparks an idea for me, and I'll look towards my IR colleagues. How much are we doing around attaching information from the National Student Clearinghouse of flagging students as, hey, the student has enrolled or previously enrolled at a different institution, and does that become an indicator that evaluation should be reaching out to them, right? And so it's, again, not the onus on the student. We could do a better job of working with the data we actually have access to. As soon as they become a student enrolled in our college, we would be able to get National Student Clearinghouse data about their previous course taking. And if they concurrently enroll, you can check retroactively to see, are they taking classes at other colleges as well?
I wanted to clarify what I put in the chat. So to choose one, sometimes students, they qualify for multiple degrees. So for example, they might qualify for business administration and economics and a public administration degree, but their goal is to transfer as an econ major. So they might have to choose the economics versus one of the others. Each campus also has different policies. Some of them, like I know I worked at one that you could get the three of them. So you could potentially get the business admin, the econ, and the public admin. But at other campuses, no, you can't have, you can't repeat the major courses in multiple degrees. There has to be a differentiation of either 6 or 12 units, depending on the campus. So there is some, I think in my mind, like policies that are restricting some of our students for completion. And that sometimes, most of the time, they're inequitable because it affects, like Kathleen was saying, the students that are the least familiar with the processes or just the educational system in general.
That's such a great point, Christina. It was really interesting to learn how much was in local control, because there were so many things I was like, oh, that must be ed code. And then I dug in, I'm like, oh, no, wait, oh, we can change that. Accepting units from the CSUs, things like that. So that it was really interesting to figure out what was a local policy and were we happy with it, just to reflect on that. And some we said, yeah, and others we tried to make changes, but such a great point, and to your question earlier, there's actually an informational kickoff tomorrow morning for California. So they're actively recruiting right now, but I do know that they just want as many colleges as they can get in the project, and not because they're getting anything out of it other than how rich this could be if, that as a system, and in partner with our CSU system was really trying to figure out some of this work together. MOUs, data sharing, you can sign up right when you start at the community college that says that you are data from your 4-year can be shared back, or that you can be shared there, what that means for students. So that's what I'm excited about, especially working with California Competes, is to try to figure out some of those common blocks that we all have that really can be adjusted from a statewide policy level while working with folks on the ground.
Yeah, and thank you, Kate. And I think it's such a great point to think about the landscape or the environment, the network of all the players who are getting involved in this and what opportunities that opens up. I know down here in our region, we have the 3 major public higher ed universities of San Diego State, UC San Diego, and CSU San Marcos. So I think there's opportunities to potentially open these conversations up for a discussion. What does this mean to the region? Could we all go in together? Or in the case that, San Diego State or UC San Diego might not be ready to play in this area yet, but CSU San Marcos is already connected with Palomar College, for example, and the North County Higher Education Association. They're doing work around program mapper between the college and the university. So those conversations are already happening. It would make sense to kind of link it and deepen it to then further help the students at both of the institutions, be able to get the degrees that they're owed and certificates that they're owed as well.
I have a question, Kate. In your experience, what are some of the biggest reasons that students stopped out and didn't get their degrees?
That's such a great question. Other than getting to the end and realizing that they had the wrong requirements or they missed something, at Shasta College in particular, we weren't offering courses in a way they could access them. We had this great myth on campus that adults didn't like taking night classes in the evening. But when we dug into it through this process, we realized that myth came from the idea because, when online became popular, all those folks started taking online classes. But in actuality, there was a budget cut So we got rid of the evening classes, so the students had no choice but to take online colleges, but it was, online classes, but it wasn't that they wanted them at that time. And so we really looked at our systems of, can they talk to somebody with financial aid out after 5 o'clock? Who can coach them on what courses they need when they're bringing in other transcripts. So we ended up creating a program called ACE, which is sort of a single point of contact for our adult learners that they can call and get the information and get support. And we did some restructuring of our course sequences and such. So the pathways, there's less pathways, but they're guaranteed pathways so that adults can come back and get in and out for 2 years in a 2-year process. So not having the classes when they needed it, at the amount of folks that we lost because of the remediation expectations, and then the fact that we only offered those classes mid-afternoon, so a working adult had, there was just no way that they could do that. So a lot of it was just in how we delivered our coursework, and the expectation that people had from 8 to 5 to be able to get their requirements.
So funny, that myth.
Yeah.
I teach almost exclusively afternoon and evening classes, and I loved working with working adults. They were the best. And that was most of my students at night and weekend. I taught like a 6 or 8 week weekend college weekend college at Cuyamaca College, and it was awesome. We had a great time.
That's awesome. Yes, we're building out a toolkit for re-engaging adults, and we're adding also the consideration for the adult learner. So if you have, if we're building a schedule that really targets folks that are balancing work and family, it tends to be an older adult. How do we make sure that we're capitalizing on who we have in our classroom? The folks that bring amazing amount of experience, that have so much to offer to the content. So that's next. It just keeps going, right? This work is just started with this like little data analysis that's ended up being so many other things for our institution.
Yeah, and I think this is such a, again, it points back to equity, because if we aren't serving the students, where are they looking to for alternatives, right? I think this is directly linked to why students often go to for-profits, especially those who tend to come from marginalized backgrounds, because they're offering things in the modalities that they need and that they would like, right? That meet their needs and their schedule. They're also offering, short-term courses and things of that nature. And our community colleges, could learn a lot, I think, from those models about what works and is effective. But let's not charge the student to have an education. We should be able to do that in public education, and not indebt them for for the foreseeable future to actually get that degree. Other questions or thoughts? I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here.
If anyone would like to know more, like Christina, I will follow up with information. Sorry, there's my puppy. And I will also connect you to IHEP, who can give more information, and also does a great job of speaking to executive leadership.
I am loading up, in case you didn't get to see the flyer yet, with some information about how to get in contact with Kate, and just more information about this particular effort that you could go ahead and share with campus colleagues to get them in the know. This is also something too, because it is on a more of a time factor. We'll go ahead and send out the Zoom link ASAP. Usually we wait to send out links until we get it closed captioned and put on our YouTube page. But because this is so timely and you might want to go back ASAP, we'll definitely make sure to get that information into your hands as soon as possible. And then we'll be asking Kate for the slides too, as well, in case you need to share them as well. So with that, unfortunately, we're coming up on 5 o'clock. I always feel like this ends so soon and the conversation is so rich, and I just want to continue to go. But with that, couple of announcements just to keep everybody in the loop and in the know here in the region. And so Wendy.
Don't forget, tomorrow is the biweekly webinar series through the Chancellor's Office, and the theme is Call to Action, Classroom and Campus Climate. That's at 9 a.m. If you happen to miss it, within a few days, we have our summary, and we'll get that out to you as well. That summary has actually been really handy for me personally. I sometimes look it up on our, which it's on our events calendar. And if you've forgotten something like who spoke or what they said, you can go there and just find it really quickly. Next.
All right. So for resources from our region specifically, we are, of course, continuing our monthly Guided Pathways office hour next month. That date has been set, as well as our colleagues from Palomar College have been wonderful and have offered to come join us for a conversation around credit for prior learning. So Kate was, pointing towards the connection between these two things. And I think that's also why we wanted to pair them up together to continue the learning around these important topics. It is pillar 4, right? Ensure learning, helping to get students across that finish line and honoring the work that they've done and what they've been learning up to that point. So thank you. Margaret is dropping links in the chat so you can make sure to get registered for that ASAP so you don't miss it. All right, and then Margaret.
Hello, so we will have this recording up on our YouTube page as soon as possible, and also be sure to check out our calendar for upcoming events and past events as well.
Great, thanks, Margaret. And then, of course, many of you are already enrolled in our regional Guide Pathways listserv, but it's a great opportunity to make sure you're connected, that you have awareness of all upcoming events, both in the region and what's happening in the state. And even also you can ask questions of our local community and put out questions as well. So Margaret has also dropped that in the chat. We hope you join if you are not already signed up.
And again, here are our latest emails. Remember, with the foundation now, and you can also connect with us on Twitter. Great seeing everyone. Thank you so much for coming, Kate. You're awesome.
Thanks for having me. What a great group. Thank you.